Hello, Steve Arts 89. I want to talk about my art and why I'm kind of not really an active artist at the moment. I haven't done anything for years, literally, actually, I have to admit. Okay, and there's a reason behind it, and it goes right back to my early days, which I just realized this recently, and I thought, I want to talk about this. Okay, so when I grew up, I kind of displayed some talent from a very young age. My mum said that, unlike all the other kids, when I brought something home for like show and tell, like that I created, she actually knew what it was. It actually functioned. The puppets worked. I could make them speak. I could create things, and she actually knew what it was. Whereas all the other kids, you sort of had to politely ask them what it was, so they could tell you what it was, and you could go, "Oh, that's a wonderful soap dish," and then put it aside. I was different, and that's fine. I started drawing, and it became obvious to the teachers and that I had talent as well. And there was another kid in my grade who had talent as well, and the two of us were sort of considered like the school artists, and we were always the ones who were encouraged and called upon to illustrate or anything or whatever. So that's sort of how primary school went. Now, sadly, my mother didn't save a single picture that I did. Not a single picture I did as a child was saved. I don't know why, but I discovered later, I know other people whose parents kept pictures of theirs, that they still haven't that. But none of mine, even though they were kind of good, were kept. So that was disappointing. So childhood, I have nothing to show for it, except a few colouring in books where I did a good job of colouring them in. Now, high school was a little different. To start off with, there was a lot of adjustment, and what I was sort of proud of when I was in primary school, that I was an artist and I was different, became a very bad thing in high school. I tried very much to conform. I knew I was sort of becoming aware of my sexuality. I was trying very much to just sort of fit in, and it took a couple of years until I really fell in love with Star Trek and started just drawing just anything related to Star Trek. I had to sort of draw. It sort of reminded people that I had talent, which was good because I wasn't doing very well. I wasn't a good student. I got in a lot of trouble. I was very unhappy. And that sort of gave me some direction. That gave me some encouragement. People were like, that's your thing. You're talented. You're an artist. That's what, you need to focus on. And that's what was encouraged. So from then on, I did very well. And all my other grades suddenly came up, even though I don't believe I actually did better work, but I was now like one of the good students. So just looking at me differently seemed to make me smarter and do well. But I wasn't trying before, and I did try after that to be a good student. And I did get the art award for that year. I got graphic design as well. I think I was doing 2 art courses, which you weren't supposed to do. I managed to talk my way out of doing physical education so I could do an extra art course. And I just became known. I was very much a showman, very much the artist. And there was another artist who was very jealous because he had more talent and he knew more about art history and, fine art. But because he wasn't as good a showman, he hadn't grown up in the school of Madonna's promoting herself, he didn't do as well. He didn't get the awards, and he resented it fairly bitterly. And I don't know what happened to him. But basically, all the art from that era, from high school, I did keep it. I catalogued it. I had it all put away, and I left it at my mother's. Now, when I went to college, it was a different experience, slightly bigger fishbowl, but I still managed to stand out there, and I still managed to get awards and get attention, and I did a lot of art, much better art, and we had a separate art sort of studio in a separate area, and all the art was kept there. And at the end of it all, I had done a lot of large works on painting, a couple of life-size portraits, because, narcissists and everything, self-examination, teenagers. But I couldn't get it home. I didn't have a car. I didn't drive. I couldn't put it on the bus. I had all this artwork. And because I had decided at that point that I wanted to go into the media and wanted to do film, and at the time there wasn't a film option, so I was just continuing to do art to try and sort of get from art into film. I just decided to leave it all behind. I didn't have a choice, but I pretended like I decided to leave it all behind. I'm just going to leave all this work. I'm just going to go because I don't need it anymore. I'm going on to something else. And I also did photography, and I did very well in that. And one of my teachers kind of wanted to sort of help me. And when I decided to move from Launceston, to Tasmania and not go to Launceston, to go to Tasmania University or Hobart or anything, and to go to Melbourne, they felt I betrayed them on some level. Sort of like, we were going to help you. You're just going to be a little fish in a big bowl. Basically making a huge mistake. You should have stayed here with us. We would have taken care of you and sort of, made you a success, basically. And my teacher literally said this to me when I bumped into him a month or so after school had passed, before I left. You're making a big mistake. And they were even offering me money to go to the college and that, to go to university in Tasmania, but I wanted to go to Melbourne. I wanted to do film, and that's what I did. So I left all the art there. I asked my brother to help me. I asked anyone with a car to help me to get my stuff back to my mum's place so I could keep it there. No one would help me, and it all got thrown away at the end. So all the art that I did over those 2 years, it was all destroyed at the end because no one was going to store it for me. So again, nothing to show for college. So then I went to university. I couldn't get directly into film, so I had to do another year of art. So I got into art. I took all the art that I had at that time in folios, and I travelled from Tasmania to Ballarat and Bendigo and all around Melbourne to all the different art universities, and they were quite impressed. I travelled all the way from Tasmania and brought all my work to show them and all that. And I got into a couple of places, and I chose one university. I'm not going to name it because I'm about to criticise it. But I went there, and of course they weren't really teaching art or how to be an artist. They were just teaching the foundations, how to paint, and it's necessary, but it's also really unnecessary and basic. And most artists, I think, resist it and resent it. And I did that, and they didn't like me because I was caring more about creating a good picture or saying something rather than just focusing on the technique, which is all they're about. Because that's all you can teach, really. You can't really teach art. You can't really teach ideas. Some people can, but most people can't. So they just were teaching the form, and although I did do everything I had to pass, and I did everything, they still ultimately failed me for the year because they just didn't like me, and I didn't follow their advice. I did everything I was supposed to do, and I did it well enough that I should have passed, but they failed me. But I had earned enough in that course to get into a media course in Melbourne, so I left and didn't care anyway. But all my art was in the studio, and I was going to go and get it, and then I got there, and they had boarded up all the, because everyone kept all their art in all these different slots at the back, and they'd all been boarded up so it looked nicer for the exhibit of the end of the year art, for the people for the who'd finished their degree. And they told me to come back on a certain date, so I came back to get it, and it had been all opened up and all thrown out. So every single piece of work that I did over that year was thrown out. So again, I lost a year of art, of my work just gone. And like I said, I asked when to come back. I was supposed to be available. It was all boarded up. I said, when is it going to be available for people to get our art out? Because I wasn't the only person that had stuff left in there that was closed off. Because I didn't live nearby. I lived in another state, so I couldn't just take it with me as I went. I had to come back and organise it properly, and I had someone to get it for me. And it was all gone, all destroyed, and I was like, starting to see a sign here. So I went to do a cinema, media and film degree and drama and all that. I spent years doing that. Eventually, and I stopped painting, just stopped cold turkey. So I'm not painting, I'm not drawing. I actually hate paint. It's messy. I wanted to work in, other visual medias. I wanted to work in film. I wanted to work in graphic design, illustration, stuff like that, but mostly film. But then I realised very quickly that Australia has a cottage industry, that's it. And my ideas were more in the realm of David Lynch, and Hollywood already had one of them, and they didn't need another one. So I learned very quickly that I wasn't going to have that sort of film career. I did have an opportunity to work in a major Hollywood production as one of the lower down sort of people, sort of assistant to one of the directors, and there's like about 5 of them, because once you get past like George Lucas, there's about 10 other people below him. It's just a whole factory, and there really is no creative input in there. It's really just a factory line, and I just sort of thought I'd rather just work on smaller projects. And the person that had gotten me the job had walked away from I think assistant director's job, because it was a bigger cog, but it was just another cog in the machine. He wanted to just go off and make his own short films, and he had sort of the experience and the connections and some money, so he just went off to do that. So I ended up just going into graphic design, because I sort of thought, you know what, originally the backup was, if you can't get into film, because I thought I might be able to get a few years in film, do some work, enjoy it, and then I'll have to have like a backup. And the backup was to be an art teacher. So I was going to do a diploma of education for art. There were issues there with that. Wasn't able to happen. And I ended up going into graphic design. And I went through and I did a whole bunch of work there again. I started off actually doing fine art, because I had to finish my fine art degree basically, because you had to have 2 degrees to do a teaching degree, and I only had cinema and media and drama, but they're all considered one discipline by most schools, with the exception of the Catholic University, but they wouldn't accept me because... So I had to go back and do another degree just so I could do a diploma of education. So I did the first year again, same problem almost, although there were issues with homophobia, discrimination, and eventually I was actually removed from the school for protesting against some pretty bad things that had happened to me while I was there. It made national news. It was in the Herald Sun. It was in some of the online papers and the local papers and the gay papers and all that for a bit. And I did, all this came from doing some collages that came from the art course, and I really enjoyed the collage, and I was doing a lot of them. I'd literally done hundreds of small ones and several large scale ones, and I was really enjoying that. And then I started to look at, okay, you've got all this art, because when I was with one of my exes, I started painting again. He convinced me I had to, work, and I had to actually make work, and he was very business about it. Like, you need to have like a series of drawings, you need to have different series so you can take them to different galleries, and it was all about the plan, and it wasn't really about the art or saying anything. It was pretty cold. I just sat down and said, well, I could do this, I could do this, I could do 6 drawings out of this, 6 paintings out of this, and I had all these lines of drawings, all these series planned, and all these series of paintings. I kept saying drawings without paintings and other media, and I worked through, I did them all, and then it came to actually selling them to people, and actually getting people to buy them, put them in a gallery and actually get exhibited. And I was in that process of working out how to contact the galleries and how to speak to people and how to network and all that. And my mother got sick. And I was on the way to a gallery with someone in the car, and I just was like, I cannot start this journey right now, because I am the youngest child. I'm the only one who doesn't have a family and obligations that they can walk away from easily. I'm going to have to take care of my mum when she gets really sick, and that's what I expect was going to happen. Before she got really, really sick, she had cancer, but she passed of a heart disease unexpectedly before anyone sort of expected. She was in a period of remission. So it didn't happen, but my whole life was on hold for 3 years, because I was she got 6 to 9 months, but she lasted 3 years. So I sort of had everything on hold, just sort of waiting, expecting to hear she's really bad, she'd come and see her, and then that's when I'd sort of was expecting to go and stay with her and take care of her. Not like my other family members weren't taking care of her, but they couldn't be there 24/7, and she didn't want to move into a home, so the idea was I was going to move in there so she wouldn't have to. She didn't in the end, but it didn't go that way. And then she passed just before Christmas, and I sort of said, I need to work on my art again. And I sort of thought, you need a bit of time to grieve. You got all the summer events with the gay scene and Mardi Gras, that just wait till Mardi Gras is over, and then sit down and look at your work and just focus on that for the next 6 months to a year. So I went to Mardi Gras, and I came back, walked into my apartment, and the whole apartment was flooded. The neighbour next door, something had happened on the Thursday when I left. So the day I left, the house flooded. No one said anything, no one told me, no one contacted me, and it was just left to sit for 5 days. and all my art, which it was all stacked along one wall, all, lined up next to each other, so you could just slide each piece of art and each series out, all sitting on the floor, were all wet and soaked halfway up and destroyed. And all the collages, which of course were made out of cardboard and paper and glue, were totally destroyed and were just turned into one big, it was just destroyed. All my art was destroyed again. And then when I was home before that, I should mention, and I was going through my mum's stuff, I was looking for my work because I had to take all my old art with me. Someone had taken it out of the house and put it into the tin garage in the back in Tasmania. In winter, of course. It rains, it's wet. It was all destroyed. So all the art when I was a child, my mum hadn't kept. All the art when I was in primary school and high school that I had kept. Actually, no, nothing was really kept from primary school. A couple of things from year 6 I kept myself. But everything from high school and first year or so of college that was small enough to take home, that wasn't the big works that were thrown out, were destroyed. And then everything that I'd kept at school in year 11 and 12 was thrown out. Everything I kept at university was thrown out. And everything that I'd produced since then was destroyed by the water. There were only a few small pieces that were sitting on top of the bigger pieces that weren't affected by the water. And they were all just random smaller pieces in an overall series. So individually they really were useless. So that's why I haven't done anything since. I have been paralyzed with the idea of starting a new project, because not only do I have not felt creative since my mother died, but just I feel like no matter what I do, it's going to get destroyed. It's not going to survive. Everything I've ever done has been destroyed pretty much, except for a few of the smaller collages that survived and a couple smaller paintings. They could literally fit in a box. That's it, because they were just sitting on top of the other paintings, which were all larger size. And a couple of canvases that I started to paint that didn't finish, that were sitting on top of the others. That's all I've got. My whole life in art, that's all I've got to show, aside from the certificates and the degrees and just, the knowledge of people that saw my work and stuff like that. And of course I have photos of a lot of it, so I can show people that I was an artist and I did do things, but you can't sell a photograph like that. If it's not photographed properly and designed to be, printed and sold, you can't really do anything with it other than say, I was an artist, I did do something. So that's where I'm at now. Now I have digital art that I want to work on. I have stories I want to work on. I still have short films, and particularly now with YouTube and TikTok and things like that, and everyone has a camera. It's very different from what it was 10, 15 years ago. So making short films and little independent films are not as difficult as they were before, and there are so many platforms. So I do have things that I want to do and I can go on with, but at the moment I'm just sort of in this limbo where everything I did was destroyed and I just haven't been able to start anything new. I've thought about continuing on the things that survived and finishing them off. I did actually start cutting out some images for some collage and that, and going through and working out a lot of the elements that I had separated and actually kept and saved. And because you can save sort of photographs and pictures from magazines and elements and textures and things you want to use in images. And I had a bunch of that and I hadn't sorted it because I just got sort of put aside after everything fell apart, basically. And I started going through that and I thought about maybe starting on that, but I didn't actually start anything. I did some preparation, but I didn't actually do anything. So that's my whole story. That's my whole life in art and how much of a tragedy it has been. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, but I have to do something because I am an artist. I need to express myself. I do identify as an artist, and I need to produce something. I do feel the urge. I just can't start, but I'm going to have to soon. And yep, I just wanted to tell that story because I've had some people say, "You're Steve Arts. You're an artist. What do you do? What have you done?" And it's like, oh, that's a long story. I thought about setting up, I was planning to set up a website to sort of have my art on that. I'm thinking of doing something that's like that still, and just having galleries of the old stuff and the things that were destroyed, and just make it very clear that this is all unprofessionally photographed stuff that was destroyed. I thought about doing that. a lot of plans, a lot of thoughts, a lot of preparations, but nothing started. And then, of course, about a year after, after everything was destroyed, what happened. And so the whole world was sort of thrown into chaos and everything was paused and discontinued and thrown up into the air, and that didn't help either. So between my personal life and the whole world, ending, I have no idea what I'm doing next. But I just wanted to talk about this for a minute and it's this sort of my way of putting it all behind me. It's like, okay, I've recorded all that. I've told that story. Now I need to move on to the next thing.